People think doing live laser engraving at events is just showing up, plugging in a machine, and pressing start. But the reality is usually a lot messier than that. Yesterday, we were engraving custom Coke bottles at a college event, and honestly, almost nothing went according to plan. I wanted to show you what to do when things start falling apart and how experience helps you stay ahead of the chaos. When we first showed up, nothing was really laid out. There weren't tables set up, nobody was directing vendors where to go, and there really wasn't a clear setup area.
Hello?
I've done enough events to know that just standing around waiting for instructions usually just wastes time. So we started assessing the area ourselves, figuring out where the power was, where the traffic would flow, and where the best setup location would be. We got our tent up, found our tables, started organizing and setting up the lasers and supplies, and basically began building the event ourselves. Pretty quickly, we realized that the sun was going to be a major problem. A lot of people don't think about that when it comes to mobile laser engraving setups, but direct sunlight can absolutely wreck your day. So we tracked down a second tent and added more coverage to protect our equipment before things got too busy and too hot. Funny enough, that extra tent ended up helping another vendor too. That's one thing I've learned doing events. If you can solve problems before they fully happen, you can save yourself a lot of stress later. Then the event officially started, and we had 0 Coke bottles. We had been told that the students would be bringing them, which sounded fine in theory, except no one told the students they were supposed to bring their own bottle. So now we've got students showing up, excited for custom engraving, and nothing to engrave on. This is where people usually panic, but there's almost always something productive you can do. Ren, Josh, and I immediately started organizing name sheets and getting students' information ready so that if the bottles eventually showed up, we could start moving fast immediately instead of creating another bottleneck later. Get it? Bottleneck? So while that was happening, I stayed in constant communication with the event organizers, trying to track down where those extra Coke bottles or missing Coke bottles were, how we were going to make this work. And eventually, a few students did start showing up with their own bottles, but unfortunately, they were not the right size bottles that we were contracted to engrave at the event. They were the tiny Coke bottles, not the full size, which is what our fully custom 3D printed jigs were set up for. And speaking of jigs, I think this is a really good time to talk about how we had these awesome fixtures made. Let me tell you. So I knew I was going to need some special fixtures for my UV lasers for this specific Coke bottle engraving job. And a few months prior to that, Seth had reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to take a look at some of his 3D printed fixtures. And he sent me a bunch to review. And let me tell you, every single one of them was so well designed and so well printed. I was like, wow, I've never seen any fixtures this nice before. He makes fixtures for X-tool machines, comm marker machines, fiber laser machines. It really doesn't matter. And he's got all kinds of very unique accessories that are very affordable that you can get to help you with fixturing pretty much anything up in your laser system. So I went back to him and I said, hey, can you make a fixture for a Coke bottle? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. And we worked together. I got in the dimensions. He probably went out and got a Coke bottle. And within like a couple of days, he had a prototype made. I just can't speak highly enough about how nice his fixtures are and what a great variety he has over on his site. You should really go and check out a2zjigs.com, which is his site. And he also threw out a special Laser Engraving 911 10% discount code, non-affiliate link for the next 30 days on all of his fixtures. And don't forget, he also does custom fixture work as well. Right on, Seth. Thanks for the fixture. Now let's get back to the video. Finally, the actual bottles arrived, but by then we had already had a huge stack of names in waiting. First come, first serve, of course. So at this point, the entire booth just switched to production mode. We were engraving as fast as possible, rubber banding the order forms onto the finished bottles and telling the students to dig through the lineup to find theirs once it was done and placed on the finished table. And it honestly became controlled chaos, but everybody stayed calm, including the students, which was great, and we kept moving. For this event, since we were engraving glass, we brought the X-Tool F2 UV. Then, right in the middle of all of that, the X-Tool started throwing a fire detection warning, which is pretty impossible with a UV laser. Naturally, that's the last thing you want to see during a live event. We checked everything. Nothing was overheating, nothing smelled weird, nothing actually looked wrong. We started troubleshooting. Eventually, we found online that direct sunlight can sometimes interfere with the machine's sensors. So Josh literally held up a tablecloth to block the sun as a test, and the error immediately stopped. At that point, we hung the cloth up properly, and suddenly everything worked again, and we were back in action. And honestly, that moment kind of sums up the event workflow perfectly. Sometimes the solution is technical. Sometimes it's stupidly simple. The biggest thing is not to freeze up when problems happen. So let's break it down. By the time the event ended, we had finished all the bottles that were supplied to us, which honestly felt pretty impressive considering how little actual engraving time we had once everything finally showed up. We packed everything down, stayed in communication with the organizers, so hopefully the remaining bottles that didn't get picked up can get to the students. We loaded up the vehicle and headed out. I think the biggest lesson from days like this is that the most valuable skill in this business usually isn't the laser itself. It's adaptability. Machines fail. Supplies show up late. Weather changes. Plans fall apart. The people who survive in this industry are usually the people who can stay calm, solve problems, and keep moving forward anyway. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap it up for this one. I wanna say a huge thank you to all of you that are already subscribed. I really appreciate your support. If you're new here and you got value out of this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. It really helps the channel and lets me keep making content just like this to help you out. Until next time, we'll see you around on Laser Engraving 911.